Welcome back to Doctor Who's Crown Jewels. So what is fairness? My criteria for Crown Jewels has largely been the best story from each season, and anything that comes close is an honourable mention. But what happens if an honourable mention in one season is better than a Crown Jewel in another? I like this more than The Mind of Evil. I think this is the first time I'm covering a Bob Holmes story. Yeah, there's a reason people say he's the greatest Doctor Who writer of all time. And Time War is remembered for two things. Introduction of companion Sarah Jane Smith. There is a reason she is the companion ever. And all of that starts within the Time Warrior when she basically forces herself into the plot because she's a journalist. And her reactions to medieval times as a feminist is very interesting. It's also remembered for being the first story to feature the Sontarans. I've never really cared too much about the Sontarans historically. It was only until the lead up to Flux that I really got them. The Time Warrior is not just the best story they've ever appeared in as a major threat, but also it's the best depiction of them. Lynx's attributes in terms of his appearance, in terms of his ideology, in terms of what the Sontarans are like as a race, are very exaggerated to the point of humour. However, Lynx as a character is not. You really start to understand what sort of people the Sontarans are just by Lynx alone. He doesn't understand human physiognomy, such as sexual dimorphism, as well as the fact that we need to eat and sleep. That is actually a big thing for us. But he's intelligent, and a warrior, and ruthless as a result. The comic relief doesn't really come from the Sontarans in this one, although I do feel like there is some comedy to be explored of the Sontarans, of course, which has been done in later stories, to varying degrees of success. But Irongron serves as a not really formidable villain. He's kind of laughable, but he's a fun one. All he wants is power and glory, and Lynx helps him get it. But he needs Irongron just because he wants to get off this awful planet. And to be honest, don't blame him. Human race bad, who wants to be here? And the Doctor himself, very charming as usual with John Pertwee. In all honesty, I think the dynamic between the third Doctor and Sarah in this story has better foundations than, say, Jo, or I dare say even Liz. I do prefer the dynamic between 3 and Liz more than 3 and Sarah, but I love them both. I also love the plot. Scientists from the 20th century pulling them back, and that's how things get investigated, and it essentially becomes a pseudo-historical. Yeah, I feel like I should call this a Crown Jewel, after all. It was quite fun. But it wasn't in the thumbnail. Before I continue, you may notice that I didn't mention any honourable mentions. Yeah, what of it? It's season 11. There's only really 2 stories worth mentioning. I know that's a bold statement, but let's be real. Death to the Daleks, while really fun, that doesn't translate into it being really good. And Planet of the Spiders feels a bit weird as a finale to an era, like a whole defined era, like not just the Third Doctor but of Barry Letts and Terrance Dicks. I know it was like a last minute change of plan, considering one of the main things they were gonna do involved someone who had died. I still feel like this course of action was a bit weird, especially considering there's quite a bit of filler and quite a bit of, let's just say, problematic depictions of certain races and how you can cure a disability with crystals. But there is stuff to enjoy in those 2 stories. Maybe not so much the Monster Peldon, I really don't get that with people. So before I start talking about the best story of the season, and one of the best stories in the John Pertwee era, in my top 3 in fact, I think something needs to be done. That's better. Starts off, London's deserted. Martial law. Doctor gets imprisoned, and they also discover the reason why London has been evacuated is because there are dinosaurs just appearing and disappearing. The reason why is interwoven with a group of people who are desperate for the world to be a better place, but it can't be, so they're gonna make a new world out of Earth's past. I love how conspiratorial this is executed, and not only that, this feels like a better ending to Pertwee's era. It's got all the elements you'd want. It's got a car chase. It's got some other action. It's got some real-life political concerns. It's got political conspiracy. It's got great interaction between Doctor, Companion, and Unit. It's got a very great human villain, and it's got shitty monster designs. Honestly, I hope when this season goes to Blu-ray, they do some CG effects over the monsters. Not because I find issue with them, in fact, I find it quite charming, and I don't know if I would like the story any other way, but I know other people would. It's something that's stopping people from enjoying the story, which I feel like people should just lower their expectations. They shouldn't have standards so far up their arse a lot of the time. But it's a good story. Something which, if you can look past the dated effects, if you can look past the fact that episode 1 is in black and white and the rest are in colour, which, if it's the consistency that you find issue with, just turn your TV screen black and white. I don't really think there's much else to say about Invasion of the Dinosaurs. I just think it's really well executed. But there is one more thing. I have to talk more about Sarah Jane. Her biggest strength in this story is the fact that she's a journalist. She investigates things and often finds leads to what's going on with the situation and is proven right because she connects the dots. Now, what is her biggest weakness in the story? Which characters are designed to have flaws. If they're not flawed, they're not relatable. And her main flaw is that she's a journalist. I know what I just said about that being her biggest strength, but it gets her into situations which are a bit precarious. Wanting to find out what's going on and essentially winds up in the lion's den. Wants to take pictures for her story, is caught up in sabotage, and nearly gets killed. Yeah, it's a flaw of her character, but it's also her biggest strength. And I think it's quite an interesting thing that a character's greatest flaw and greatest strength are interwoven. I just think it's good characterization. I really like it. And this sort of stuff is, again, I mentioned the list last week when I was talking about the Green Death. Characterization is what I come to Doctor Who for. Especially Classic Who. I think it has such great characterization. Right, time to turn the colour back on. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts on Season 11? What's your favourite story from it? Have I missed anything notable about these stories without spoiling them outright? Because here's the thing, I want everyone to watch Invasion of the Dinosaurs. It's amazing. Pertwee wears blue in it. You wouldn't have seen that because I had it in black and white. But trust me, it's good. And I don't want to spoil it. I knew the twist going in, but there is a twist that, yeah, it is there quite early on, but the way it unfolds and the way it's handled in the story is great. But if you disagree with me, or feel like something else should have at least been considered, leave your comments down below. I'll ignore you if you praise the elements of Tommy being cured in Planet of the Spiders. But anything else that isn't just problematic, no matter how you look at it, fine. I'll listen to you. I'll listen to you about even the Monster of Peladon being the greatest story ever made. I've got to go now. But you'll see me next week as we tackle the Scarf Man, dude person, the 4th Doctor Who, Tom Baker, and his first season. I'll see you then.